It can. So, but thank you for asking. My head is fine. Okay. Temperature-wise, that's right. I have no account for what's going on inside of it. I'm not required to put that out. Sometimes I make the mistake of it, and people are like. So, welcome back. We're going to continue our discussion on the game of life. A little bit of restructuring. Originally, I had intended for this lesson to sort of talk late life finances, how we view the world, the fact that life is a gift. But as I was creating it, it restructured itself. So we're going to put that one a couple of weeks down the road. We're going to kick that can. Because instead, a different conversation came to light. So we'll have that one this morning. So to start with, our memory verse. This is the goal. And for this week, Psalm 71, 18. So, interesting psalm. For as long as the Jewish community can remember, they consider this to be a psalm from David in his late life, discussing his frustrations with the fact that, one, he's getting older, and two, his son Absalom is in rebellion. And so the psalm goes through and discusses, it's David. So David's a little more blunt and direct and honest with God than the rest of us can usually achieve. And so first he thanks God for saving him. Then he asks God to destroy his enemies while protecting himself. And then he follows up with a, thank you. I know that you are with me always, even in my old age, and that you will preserve me for this exact reason in the psalm, so that I can tell those who come along after who you are and how great you are. Whether or not it belongs to David has kind of come into contention within the last 20 to 40 years. Americans are wonderful animals, but you think if you can't find something written in English to corroborate what you want, it didn't happen. So it's very hard to find an ancient Hebrew author who writes in American 1,400 years before it comes into existence. So you may find some things on the internet these days that will tell you it's in contention whether or not David wrote that and whether or not it's specifically related to that time and period of his life. But I'm going to give it to the old Jewish forefathers on this one and say that they were alive then. They kind of kept the memory and the understanding and knowledge of when this is written. But the point for us on this is that even when we are old and gray, God is still with us. We still have purpose. He is still keeping and maintaining us because this week you turn 50 or older in the game of life. We talked for the last several weeks about things that went on outside of us as we go through life, right? We had our children. We watched them grow up and have their lives. We have watched our parents grow old, and we have figured out what we needed to do. And now we're going to get back to talking about everyone's favorite subject, me, right? Not me as in you talking about Ray Fuller, that'd be gossip, but me as in you talking about you, okay? 50 comes to everyone, right? And no running, no hiding. Some of you are not there yet. You can't imagine it. I mean, it might be again as long as you've lived already before you hit 50, right? You're not 25 yet? 26. Are you? Man, you're ancient. I hope you packed your bags for your next trip into the afterlife. But it happens. It happens to everyone. So, if you use the board game, the game of life, and some things have happened to us while we were talking about other things going on around us. And so, some of these might seem familiar, some of these might stir up some conversation amongst you. As always, just raise your hand and we'll get after it. So, a lot of paydays. Game of life is all about paydays if you play the game. Because it's all about money at the end. We're going to get there and discuss that. So, only two things are true in all the world. That's right, death and taxes. Pay the piper. And so we did. And we have done that continuously throughout our lives. So the board game, the game of life, is a little bit funny. We had a choice, if you remember in our first discussions, as to whether or not we were going to go to college or we were going to go somewhere else and have a career. the game doesn't give that option to your children. It just assumes everyone goes to college because it's a way to draw money out of the player so that at the end of it you actually have something to count because everybody has made and lost money, and that's what's used to determine the winner. But we do this, right? We help finance our children's future throughout their lives. No? Who said no?
I agree. I say no.
That's funny. I think you did emotionally. I think you fully prepared them to, and so, great point you didn't make, I'll make on your behalf. We're really talking about the investment in a person, right? Not financial.
Oh, okay, yeah.
We're talking about the investment about them across all the emotional spectrum, right? Some days I made them sad because it was a part of their growth. Some days I made them happy. But we continue to invest in our children, right? All the days of their lives. I'm not getting a single head nod. I wonder, I fear for your children. I'm like, wow, okay, maybe we aren't. So, I don't know. You guys spending time with your children? You talking about them? Talking to them? Spend a lot of time talking to them.
Well, really the best thing to do in terms of the investment into the children is investing in them enough and giving them the tools that they need to succeed on their own. That's really where the investment is.
That's right. So it's that magic direction. You know, I put all my time and effort and energy into them so that they go off in that direction I call leave. Just go. Have a life. Be fit. How many financial disasters has there been in your life? It's really weird, right? You have lived during an amazing time. 4 times in your life if you are just 50, 6 times if you are 70 or older, the stock market has reset. It's phenomenal. Never before in the history of the stock market has such an opportunity come up for so many people. But it's not just that, right? Bad things happen all the time. This is one that, if you paid attention, you could probably see coming, but not all of them, right? We live in Kansas. Tornadoes are real, right? They're not just a space on the board. We just had one the other day. Right now it's on track, not here in Kansas, but it's on track to have been the largest tornado in U.S. history. It traveled 238 miles, which is also the longest track of any tornado we've ever recorded. And it was an F5. And it destroyed lives all the way along that path, and some of which you're already seeing in the news in the big towns. Destroyed an Amazon factory, some other places. So life happens, right? These are huge, catastrophic events. I wish Gene was sitting in here, because there's one common theme to all of these incidents when it involves paying money in the game of life, and that's insurance. Whoever made the board game, the game of life, was a fan of insurance, and they wanted to enforce that at every opportunity. And so everything that happens to you just about can be mitigated through insurance, which can be true in life, but you got to buy the right insurance for the right purpose. Anyone have a tornado hit their house ever? Here?
It actually didn't hit our house. Took the roof off the house behind us and threw it into our house.
Wow. So your neighbor got a new roof and you got his old one. Hey, way. So, we've had them here in Manhattan, right? It was almost a decade ago now?
Yeah.
Years get really weird when you get over 50.
2008 was...
2008, wow.
Yeah.
So, 14 years ago. And then 19 what?
93.
93.
And 66 is the...
And 66, they go way back. So it periodically happens here. So check your neighbor's roof, buy insurance on his house, and get ready to get a new roof of your own. So, anyone ever get robbed? It wasn't me. In all the time you've known me, I can guarantee it wasn't me this time. Kind of saddening event, right? Nobody likes it to happen. But occasionally in life, some things come along to rub that away and we feel pretty good, right? Congratulations, you won a Nobel Prize. Pick the subject, you're the world's foremost expert at it, and the game gives you that. A lot of money comes with that prize. Nobody here ever won a Nobel? Yeah, me either. Does it come with a statue? Because I'll buy one off the internet and just put it up on the shelf.
It's a big coin.
Is it a coin?
Yeah, like a big medallion.
Does it come on a necklace?
It does.
Nice. Those are the best, right? Because you can wear those to work. Look at what I won.
Impress your friends.
That's right. Wear it to all the social events. If only, right? Some of them are a little less catastrophic, but still world-changing events. Again, what's the great mitigator? That's right. If Gene was here, he'd be like, yes, yes, thank you. He might be paying me some money. I'll see him later. But trees fall, right? This is Kansas. Again, this is Kansas. We get all the weathers right here.
Even in the same day.
I've seen them all happen in the same day. Trees fall. So, and you've got some big trees in Manhattan. And occasionally they do fall. And a tree will take a bite out of a house. Or a car. It about ends a car's career, right? You can retire that car, he's done. Body damage like that can't be repaired. So, speaking of your car, ever have that happen?
Does firebombing count?
Does firebombing count? Wow. I don't know who your friends are, but I know of an incident.
I know.
So, whew, when people firebomb your car, I don't know, you're either a political dissident or a landlord.
The same.
One of the two. So, getting your car stolen can also be mitigated by what?
Insurance.
That's right, you missed it. I've been plugging you for hours now.
I could.
Right.
Gene has a table set up in the foyer.
That's right. So, after this
That's what he was
pitch,
doing.
if you feel that you need any insurance in your
No, I
life.
don't want to get thrown out. I don't want to get beat.
All right. So all of that, as we move across the board and catch up to where we are in our life, just to say that by the time you're 50, you probably feel like you've seen a little bit of things, right? I can guarantee you that if you're 50 or over, unless you're a rare person indeed, you've seen more life behind you than you will in front of you. So we've got some experience to draw. And we've got some, hopefully we've got some knowledge baked into that head of ours. We're not still just reacting to life, as it were. So some questions and observations about all of that as we get into this part of our life. Not yet the sunset, but certainly the late afternoon. So despite all those things that are going on, some things can still be new, right? Not always in a good way. I don't remember the first day that I ever bent over and said, ugh. But one day it struck me that I was doing that, and I've done it every day since. Sleep gets a little harder to have. I used to be able to sleep an entire day away when I was young, and loved it. People would be like, Ray, get up. I'm like, no, it's Friday. They're like, it's Monday. just saving it up, because I knew later on in life I'd need it, right? But life starts to hurt at a certain point physically, right? Nothing you can do about it. Get used to it. It's just a little bit of aging. Right? My knees are always with me. They're always there to say hello. I feel them every minute of my life.
They have shots for that.
They do. Can I get insurance for my knees?
I speak from experience.
That I can get insurance for my knees?
No shots.
I know people who have insured their face and appearance, right, if it's your life. Yeah, so they have shots. Science is a wonder. They can do certain things with them. I'm still young enough to where I feel stubborn. So I'm not getting the shots just out of pure stubbornness. But I'm that way. Did you hear that? That was my knee.
I will quote my father.
Better take care of them.
S, and I was going to close with that statement about my knees. So there comes a time where it's no longer debatable, right? It's sort of like the day you figure out you're going to retire. You can talk about it all you want, but one day you wake up and you know. And you're like, yep, that'll be the day. Even if it doesn't fit your plans. And it gets closer the older we get, right? Every day you go into work, you're like, it could be today. It could be today. Just let my boss do one thing. And it could be today.
I can retire faster than you can fire me.
Huh?
I can retire faster than you can fire me.
No, I want him to fire me, but you're right, you're right. I can retire faster than you retire me, right? Just drop the mic and walk out. I'm done. My paperwork will be submitted later. What about that? Ladies? Hitting a little too close to home, is it? Perhaps? I think everybody snores at a certain point in your life. Something goes on in your sinuses, something goes on in your breathing, and everybody picks up snoring as a new hobby. And it's the one hobby nobody ever wants to own and claim. So there's one way to know for sure. The day you wake yourself up, own it. That day comes to everybody. There's no denying that, right? You wake yourself up, you're like, was I? Yes, you were. And own it from that day forward. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just a part of aging. Because if you deny it, how does your partner react? Kind of like that, right? For a long time.
That's the elbow at 2:30 in the morning. Shut.
Right? Yeah, it can start fights in a family if you're not careful. You gotta... So when you own it, things become a lot easier. There's I won't say a debate, but there's a discussion out there in the American community at large about having an extra bedroom somewhere with a bed in it that one of you can self-exile to occasionally. Because sleeping is about sleep. And if you're not getting it because you're stubbornly listening to someone snore and getting mad and frustrated at them, you're playing the game wrong. There are smarter ways to do this. It's easier just to say, this is about sleep. And go get some. That's personal opinion. I'm not saying move into another room. I'm just saying have a place to go. Because the snore won't stop, right? You can do whatever you want to me, and the snore won't stop. It just seems to go that way. So, however, all these things going on with us, there's an opportunity there as we get into our later years to get a little depressed about that or a little bit sad, because we tend to focus on ourselves and what's going on with us and not staying focused on our memory verse, right? So, Isaiah 46:4. This is a wonderful chapter because God sort of says something not so nice, or he says something nice, he says something not so nice, and then he says something nice again. And this is to the entire, tribe of Israel. And he tells them, he's very mad at them, because once again, they have gone after some foreign gods. And in this case, it's a Babylonian god and a local god. And God himself does not mince a lot of words with mankind. He's much more direct than Christ ever chose to be. And so he essentially says that once again you have gone whoring after these foreign gods. And he uses that word. And he's mad. And he tells Israel what's going to happen. And what's going to happen here in the future?
They're going to be taken into captivity.
Right. They're going away for an extended day trip, right? It's going to last some decades in lifetimes as punishment. Now, of course, after that, they never forget again. It's amazing. It only took, how many years of being exiled from their promised land to figure it out. But what he says in the end is, even though I am mad at you, even though that you do this thing again, he leaves that part unsaid, but true. I will still carry you when you are old. And when your hair turns gray, and I will still carry you because I made you, and I will carry you to safety. Now, he's talking about the tribe. God is thinking in terms of generations and his people. But it is absolutely true if you apply it to us. That is not you're not misconstruing the intent of God's words at all. So, no matter what we do our entire lives, if we are true to God, God is with us. So I think the answer is very simple, right? We stay true to God. Does that make sense? Seems easy, right up until we become self-centered and we start thinking about ourselves and we forget all of the things that the Lord has taught us. But it's not all bad. There's some good things about being this age. And we've talked about a few of them, so I'm going to pull those out again, hopefully with these next few slides, as we go through our discussion. So at 50, I know exactly who I am. Not a lot of discovery learning. I'm not going to be one of those guys who wakes up at 58 and suddenly says, I want to go be a physicist today because that seems interesting to me now. I've met some of those people. I think it's exciting for them and it's wonderful and go. But that's not going to be me. I know exactly what I want to do, where I want to do it, and when. And with that comes a little bit of comfortability with self, right? I think that at some point in your life, you have to settle into you, if that makes sense. And for some people, I find that it's this period in their lives. When we finally figure out where we're going to go and what we're going to do in the last stage of it. You know, I'm going to be a world trip person, and that's who I'm going to be. Less worries? Yes? No? Depends on what? Health. Ooh, that's a great point. You realize you're sitting right next to your wife, right? I'll take that as a positive, though. As long as she's there, you're fine.
No, I was talking about if you have to have a child come home, or if you have...
Oh, we're going to talk about grandparenting.
A parent come home.
Yeah.
You may not have less words.
So, correct. Let's save that conversation for when we're talking about being grandparents. And stay focused on self. So are you more or less worried about Gene at this stage in your life? I think you've got Gene, right?
I don't worry about Gene.
Right. Because you know what you need to do every day. You know how to maintain your health. You're comfortable in your relationships. You've figured out how to be a husband and wife, hopefully. And you're good there, right? But you're right. There are still plenty of things that can intrude. We're gonna get to those, but not today. Today we're just going to talk about ourselves being over 50. Because I made the assumption that our kids were grown adults and they had gone in that magic direction of out. Yeah.
Absolutely.
On their own.
Yeah. Or their spouse implodes, or,
Or their what?
Or their spouse implodes.
It happens, right? Life can take a turn life can take a turn in any direction at any time.
Yeah, I don't think any age has less worries. I mean, especially after you have children. I mean, obviously I'm not 50 yet, but I just don't foresee like the...
You're not a cool kid yet? I would have thought you were. You're wearing the right kind of shirt, you know, with stripes, 70 stripes across it.
I'm prepping.
So,
I'm knocking on the door, but
right?
yeah, it's I don't see how.
Come see me.
I think every stage has its worries.
Every stage has its worries.
It's a different set, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
You get to the point, you're not worried about your kids as much, but you may have to parent your parents.
Right, and we talked about that a couple of weeks ago, and you're right. And that's what I think is getting to it depends on who lives with you and what your current conditions are.
Right.
Sir.
When you talk about different ages, still have different worries. I remember the last thing I heard Bonnie's 94-year-old grandmother say was, I don't want to die because I want to be sure everything's all right with my great-grandchildren.
That's an amazing sentiment. I don't know how you solve that one, though. At some point, you got to let them go. I hope that when I'm a grandparent, I can look at my children and say, you're doing it right because we spent the time to show you and we have discussions about it. And certainly by the time we get to the grandkids, great-grandkids, that we've got that in enough generations that at least we're okay. But it's a wonderful sentiment, but you're right, there are worries.
I'd like to think that, Ray, but after 6 kids, I just come to realize you're just winging it every day.
Well, with 6 you kind of are. They outnumber you.
I mean, you have a plan a little bit, you know, but I mean, what I'm thinking is...
They've got all the energy and
you always
ammunition.
get that thing that you're just like, oh my Lord, I have no idea what to do with this. Yeah.
Kids
So
think you have all the
wing
answers and we
what
still
you think
don't.
is right.
Tracy?
I was just gonna say, I think the older you get, you at least hope that you have more of an eternity focus. And with that comes worry about those around you and their spiritual life. So, for instance, she was concerned about great-grandchildren, and I would think that might be from a spiritual aspect too. Have I said and done the things that I should have to point them towards God?
But also with that kind of, you enter into a point where you are getting more peace with
Right, from
yourself
that.
and your relationship.
Right. In regards to that subject, so, pains me to say this, but I am through it and over it. I will never see my mother in heaven. She chose never to come to the Lord. I have no hope other than that, well, I say it this way, I have no hope that I will see her there because I don't know that God makes that concession. And so, she has made a decision. I rest on the fact that, God is righteous and he'll judge her and based on some verses in heaven, I'm going to accept and be okay with whatever the outcome is when I get there. And so there's a point in our lives where we have to get okay with that. I have seen that aspect of faith destroy people in their latter years. And they begin to try to bend Scripture. Yeah. And we create places like purgatory where people go in waiting to exchange my prayers for their sins and wait for God to forgive them. Or we baptize people who have come before us and are dead because we don't trust Scripture when it says God will judge them in accordance with the time they lived. And we get it all twisted.
Yeah, I think also one of the hardest things to come to the realization of is that it's and speaking of the kids growing as adults, there comes a point in time that it's their salvation, not mine. It's their faith.
So when is that?
And so I can see where that would be a worrisome thing, obviously, where you're praying for that and everything else. But yeah, I can see where that would be maybe an issue for people.
Right. I used to explain it to my son in this way. You are free to ride on the coattails of my faith all of the days of your life until God can look at you and clearly see that you are making adult decisions and you are well past that stage, my friend.
Right.
And so, now he was baptized before that in his teens, but that was one of the conversations we had. Because when he first came to me, and this is sort of the opposite of what you just said, when he first came to me and said, I want to be baptized, I said no, and I walked away. And he let me do it to him. And so I knew he didn't want it. There were a lot of kids getting baptized around him right then, and he was just kind of jumping on the bandwagon. Second time he came to me and he said, Dad, I want to get baptized. And I said, no. And I walked away, and I heard some, but he didn't stop me. And then the third time he came to see me, he said, Dad, I'm inviting you to my baptism. And so he wasn't asking my permission. He was telling me he was being baptized and that I was invited to attend. And I said, thank you, and I attended, and it was wonderful. And you can feel, both ways about how I did that in particular. It was just simply how I wanted to make him fight for it so that it was hard fought and won, and he can feel some ownership in it. I won't say it's the only or the right way. Just say it's the way Ray Fuller did it. So, yeah, we can worry about all those spiritual aspects as we get older. And I think that as we get rid of the other concerns, those do kind of come forward. Because it's the only thing we've got left, right? But getting to what you said probably 3 or 4 weeks ago now, there's a lot of freedom in being an older person. And a lot of fun in being an empty nester. I get to go where I want.
I guess it's about culture again. I was raised in a big family, and now I see how this family makes a big impact in my life and whatever I am today. My granny, when I was young, I think how stupid woman she is. She has no wishes for herself. The best stuff that she do, every morning, if I'm going to school, my breakfast was on the table. Everyone who was going, she was getting up in the 4, 5, and do everything what he can for everyone from us. And I think, for God's sake, woman, do you not have any wishes for yourself? She was happy with us. She did not want to travel around Europe. All world was in this house, with this family. I know it's very hard now to explain to anyone this, because we are not living like this anymore. But now when I'm older, I wish that I could be just part of what she was. She was the most great woman in the world. She did not have all elementary school finished, but she made such an impact on us that you cannot imagine what she was doing. When my father, he was the only child. She get up in the morning, she take him, he make him breakfast and everything, ask him what you want to have for lunch. When every family comes, you know when you are coming, lunch was on the table. And she was sitting with us and asked, is it good? And now I'm doing that. It's good or not? When my father comes, she will take her shoes and everything, take out on the yard, that is get fresh air. I mean, she lived for us. And now when I'm listening to you, you are just talking about selfishness. You are talking about traveling around the world. You are talking about how will you please yourself.
Yes, that is the conversation today. You've hit the nail on the head.
Family, that the world will be a much better place. Just take care about your family, nothing more. Okay, I finished.
No, I agree. And that's why all the other conversations have been about those aspects. At some point, you have to consider yourself, though. We're not saying that it becomes your sole focus, because you're right, that would be wrong. But if I'm going to be aging, then I should probably discuss the aspects and implications and ramifications of that to us. Otherwise, if we don't pass on that shared information, we run into walls, and we wonder why we ran into them in the dark. So I don't disagree, but we got to keep each lesson in context of the greater lesson theme. So you're right, though, cultural differences. I never met my grandmother on either side of my family. Never will. Don't even know what that looks like. So grandparenting for us will only come from our experience with Denise's mom doing it. And we lived thousands of miles apart. And so it wasn't active and it wasn't daily. So we'll get to write our own chapter on that.
And I do understand that your focus today is discussing you personally as you get to this age and what you've gone through. And I get the differences here between what was said, but thinking through that, the aches, the pains, those types of things that you may tend to focus on, I guess I would say the more that you can have other things to do, the less you will focus on those things. So my time is my own, but when I first saw you put that up there, I thought, well, technically, if you have a spiritual viewpoint, it's not your own. That's not why we're here. And so if you have an outward focus, I think you will tend to not focus on...
Right, the choice is where I choose to spend my time. That's your freedom. You don't have that when you're young. You get up, you go to work, you come home, you parent, you go to bed, rinse, repeat, and then whatever activities somebody has planned for you over the weekend, you go execute. That's essentially 22 to 47, if you guys aren't tracking. Or later, if you have your kids later in life. Especially in America, where we love to fill our time with children's extracurricular activities and call that parenting. Personal opinion. Just be careful of where and how you're devoting your time, so that later on, when you do have a choice what you want to focus on, you can focus on some things that the Lord wants. Because I would offer that the worst thing that can happen to you in your 50s is that you end up reparenting broken children or broken grandchildren. We'll get there, because it happens. So, all of that and all that previous to say that you are the boss of you. you felt like the boss of you for a little while because you're an adult. But now that you've got that potential freedom of time, hopefully you're financially okay and stable, and you can start to spend your time thinking of other things and other works. That's when you realize you're the boss of you. When you tell yourself whether or not you get up in the morning, and no one else is involved in that decision, there's no financial ramifications because someone else is paying me a check, and there are no other issues like that, I would offer that that's when you're the boss of you. And so, it's an art. You got to figure it out. Because we're supposed to do this, and so you jumped a few slides ahead of me, but not many. What is our focus supposed to be later on in life? When you are finally free to do it, I would offer that God's work is always ready and willing and able to be done. And there are things and ways we are able to accomplish it when we are older that are not ready or present when we are younger. So you may finally have time to sit around and visit. You may finally have time to actually condense all that time you've spent on the world into a couple of things that you can offer to others as both wisdom and advice. Because that's how we're supposed to pass on our knowledge. Your culture does it passively just through living. You stack 4 generations of people in a house, and some culture gets rammed down every other generation, right? It's plastered all over them. They can't escape it. We don't do it that way. And so I guarantee you that if you don't do it some way, you won't be doing it anyway. And when you wonder why 2 generations after you, the world is an entirely different place, it's because you let them make their own choices. And I know that sounds sideways, because we're all about freedom and we want people to make choices. But God has a set of morals and values. And they're not negotiable. And if you don't pass them on and they're forgotten, own it.
Just to say one more stuff, when you are aging in family, when you have grandchildren and you have children with you, you are not feeling old because you have all the time something that you have to do. So this is a benefit for everyone. Children, parents are working. They have no time many often for children. Grandparents have time. And they talk with them, and they feel, and the children come, it's not come in the house, it's come to the home. So this living together is really, really important. I will never change anything in my life. Although when I was teenager, I was mad. I mean, they were stupid, I was smart, and like, you know how it is go. But now I see benefits of this living, and I really wish that we not live like 4 generations, maybe like I was, but this connection that we still have. And I really wish American society could still have this connection. That parents help grandchildren because they really need one another.
I watched Denise's family do that for 1 generation successfully. There's just too much land in America. There's too much space. We can go, and we do. And everybody speaks the same language. And our culture, for all, in air quotes, because I'm not sure we have developed our culture yet. We have one, though, the one we live in. And they all hung out together, and they all stayed together, and then their children, because there's no pressure to do this. There's no pressure to stay together.
It's choice.
Yeah.
It's choice. It's these several bucks that you get more important than your family. It's choice.
That hurts. I don't think it means that they've chosen something that's more important than their family. But I also think it does, and that's why it hurts. So there's an art to that. How do you keep families together? How do you keep culture together? How do you keep values together? And how do you press those down to your next generation? So I think this sort of sums it up along the lines of that. The part of that that's missing is the why. And the why comes both before and after that verse, where the author is specifically talking about the importance of being a Christian, not giving up hope, not giving up faith, and staying focused on God. And so That's the eternal glory that he's talking about, and why we aren't discouraged, because he's got a focus on God through all the trials, all the problems, all the tribulations, and age, which you can put in under the trials and tribulations part, but that's our specific comment for today. And so, what is the hardest part of the race? Not quite, but it's the near end, where you really do make a choice. Am I going to start walking and quit running because I'm exhausted? Or am I going to continue to run and look for that final strength for a sprint and set a new time record for myself? It's not the wall. Anyone who runs is familiar with the concept of the wall. You hit the wall kind of about halfway, and then you run through it, and then you're okay for the rest of the race. This is that final leg. So, Fred, you're a runner. Are we, huh?
Jogger.
Okay. But but Fred says jogging, right? And he jogs like 25 miles. It's like silly. You've been in the Boston Marathon. And so is it that final 1/4 of the race where you're just exhausted and you can quit, right? Nothing's holding you to the course but you. And so the Bible has an answer for that, because it has an answer for absolutely everything. And it says, focus on God and keep your eye on the prize. And if we do that, we'll be successful by the only measure that is important in our lives as a Christian. And so, that's the lesson for today. We're about 5 minutes early. That's okay. I'm sure I've stolen more than that amount of time from you over the last several weeks.
Right. I was going to say, I have written in my Bible by this scripture the word contentment, and that it's written several places in my Bible, and I think we often have our difficulties and our what was the word you used earlier? I guess striving for other things. If we will just settle into a contentment in Him, then you don't have that wrestling with what should I be, what could I be, what kind of thing. So I don't know. I guess I look at this as a contentment in life, I guess.
Yeah, our culture pushes you. We're capitalists. Don't forget who you are. And our culture pushes you to strive and have, I want to say demonstrable, but that might be the wrong use of the word, successes that you can show to others. And so we're award and plaque people. That's why there was a generation that gave their kids awards for being first loser. We're
Right.
plaque oriented, and we're goal oriented, and we're success oriented. And God is not that way.
And I guess I might say things we might have put at a higher level of importance in our life, maybe we've come to a point to realize they aren't as important as we once thought they were.
Right? I used to think security was the most important thing in my life. And part of me still does, and will every day of my life. But as a Christian, I understand that I've got all the security I need if I just lean on God. And so every day it's a battle for my trust, whether or not I'm going to give it to God or I'm going to selfishly contain it within myself and try to lean on the things I've created. So for the next couple of weeks, we're going to talk about being older. And so there are a lot of subtopics in that. We're going to talk about grandkids. We're going to talk about ourselves then becoming the parent